Welcome back, everybody, to the Below Average Joe's MMA show. Recap edition. We're here on this fine Monday morning. We're recording this on Sunday. So, once again, just like I said on Friday, happy Easter, happy Passover. Um, what's the one I'm forgetting? Happy
Ramadan.
Ramadan. For those of you who celebrate today, this week, this month, I know the dates are all different depending on your holiday. Hope everybody has a great time of month spent with family, friends, your loved ones. I know me and Dominic have done our fair share of that this weekend. We are counting down the days, everyone, till I will officially be in Ohio. And again, actually, no, the next episode you see, I will be on the move,
Yeah,
in the
the
middle of
last one
moving.
in Indiana for you, I
Yeah, the
guess.
last one in Indiana. So what a moment. But
hmm
that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about UFC 287 and a little bit of PFL 2. Dominic, the women's featherweights and heavyweights took center stage in that one on Friday. But Dominic, I just want to kind of, check in with you, ask how was your weekend? Um, have you spent a lot of time with friends and family? Is that happening today? What plans you got going on?
That's definitely the storyline for the whole weekend. Quality time with loved ones, friends, family. Shout out to the wonderful lady, the wonderful girlfriend Jaden. She is now done with her final internship for college, so she's back home finishing out the last month of school. Very proud of you. I know you're listening, so congratulations to you. Had our buddy here last night watching with us as well. A lot of family time today. Good food, good eating. There's just something special about it. But first, we break down, not break down, we recap quite a humongous weekend in the MMA space. Noah, how has your weekend been with family back home?
It's been good. I've kind of talked about what we'd be doing on Friday and stuff. So shout out to my grandma, 80th birthday. But I'm proud of Jaden for hitting the home stretch here.
hmm
I still think she was a little harsh on Robert's Western World, but that must be a debate for another time,
Yeah.
perhaps.
hmm
But I'll tell you what is not up for debate, Dominic.
What would that be?
And that is that Israel Adesanya perhaps had a all-time moment last night.
I'd
Uh,
say, yeah.
that might be the best way I can kind of summarize it. Essentially, he gets the second round knockout of the sitting champion Alex Pereira, reclaims his middleweight title, adds a one on the scoreboard. Although, what was his little saying? He said, I don't keep scores, I settle them."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't matter to him. But he finally gets a win over his boogeyman, Alex Pereira. Um, Comes about, I want to say, like 4 minutes, 33 seconds of round number two. And Dominic this fight was great, by the way.
It
The
was.
second round, especially, was just awesome. Alex Pereira, once again, those leg kicks are something fierce, and they were definitely taking a toll on Izzy. Izzy definitely has moments. Actually, I was surprised. I scored round one for Pereira, but the all three judges scored it for Izzy, it
I
turns
saw
out.
that.
So
Yeah.
not I thought it was a close enough round, so no robbery there. And
hmm
obviously Izzy turned the lights out in round two, knocked him out cold. And the way he set it up is, I mean, that's everything about it, Dom, is all time.
hmm
An all time setup, doing the rope a dope, sort of feigning the injury to let Pereira come in, maybe a little overzealous,
hmm
trying to get a finish. The knockout punch, the knockout sequence, all timer.
Yeah.
Definitely going to be on the something we'll talk about the Joeys at the end of the year, I feel like.
hmm
And then the celebration was like the cherry on top. Does the three arrows, then
Yeah.
snaps the bow over his knee. And then, if that wasn't enough, my man finds Alex Pereira's crying son in the crowd, points at him, and mimics the dead, fallen over
Mm.
thing, just
Mm.
like Pereira's son had done to Izzy after Pereira had knocked him out in kickboxing.
That's cold.
Yeah.
Mm.
So what a just a what a just sequence of events. And then he gets on the mic afterwards, Dom,
Oh,
and
what a microphone
has a
moment.
great
Yeah.
speech afterwards. You could really sense what he was talking about. Like, I hope every person can feel just this once in their life, this type
Mhm.
of happiness, and you could feel it. Like, you could just tell he was radiating after that.
Mhm.
This was a very interesting fight week and fight and lead up for Izzy. It felt like he was doing a lot of things against what he normally does. We did not see him much in the time between the last fight and this one, not doing a whole lot of interviews and whatnot. Fight week, you can sense a lot of intensity. Sure, he's still throwing his like lines out there.
Mhm.
Good for a corny line every once in a while. I'm not sure how people feel about the dog collar one, but not my favorite.
Yeah.
But and then once you saw the walkout, he didn't do no dance, he didn't do
Mhm.
no Undertaker. Shout out to Headstrong by Trapped, by the way. I mean,
Yeah.
taking me
Yeah.
back a little bit. But he walked out to that. You could sense just how just intense he was. Going up against a man who is always intense and with the most accurate walkout song I've ever seen. The most fitting walkout song I've ever seen was Alex Pereira because it was absolutely terrifying, just
Mhm.
like him. But this fight just had a ton of intensity on it when they were actually in the middle of the cage before the fight started. Very intense. And Izzy, I asked you Friday. I said, or maybe I just said this Friday. I can't remember if I asked for your thoughts, but I said I thought Izzy's typical way of fighting, a way that has earned him so many title defenses. It has raised his legacy to bubbling on all time great. I also thought was not a the most advantageous way for him to win this fight. I thought if you fought that way 100 times against Pereira,
Yep.
you might win 35 to 40 times. I said I needed this. He needed to do something different. So Dominic, now that the fights happen, did Israel Adesanya do something different here to pick up this win, or did he ultimately beat him the only way he knows how?
Yeah, it's like Izzy took what he's always done and then just like took it up a notch that we hadn't really seen before. Like, yeah, he's gotten finishes in the past, but it's kind of a slow pacing, methodical bam, finds the shot. This time, he pretty much brought it to Alex throughout the fight. And yes, the finishing sequence was him, shuttling up on the cage, but still, man, he was just a very aggressive version. He was throwing some of his own leg kicks as well, mixing in good high kicks, the question mark kicks. It was just good work. As Noah said, a very great fight, a very like I don't know if you can find two other people and have a higher level kickboxing fight than what that was last night. I mean, it
Right.
was just a pleasure to watch it. And like I said, man, Izzy just found a way to take what he does best and do it even better. He looked honestly like one of the best versions of him we've ever seen in the octagon. It's crazy that he finds new ways, whether it's really small nuances or things we've never seen before, like the way he got the finish last night. And he just brings him out, I feel like, every fight in some sort of capacity. So it was just a great performance. What a way to get the title back. And Noah, this has been on my mind since last night and all this morning. And it is, you know, it's 1-1. Alex still holds the total record of 3-1 if you count the kickboxing. And so it seems like, yeah, Trilogy should come next, right? Really settle the score. But Noah, the way that that fight ended last night, it felt like nothing more needed to be done, nothing more needed to be seen. It felt like that type of finish, that type of post-fight celebration, post-fight interview felt like a stamp to end a rivalry, even though traditionally when the numbers are the way they are, I wouldn't come on here and say that the next day. What do you kind of think of the way I just described that?
Well, that was our entire story
Mhm.
setup that we did on Friday. Was this idea? Israel Adesanya kept talking about my story,
Mhm.
his story, history. That he said that again in his post-fight interview. But talking about how like this is my story. This isn't how it ends. And I raised a question. Well, what if it is Pereira's story?
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, Dom, Israel actually kind of acknowledged that in the
Mhm.
post-fight interview. He said, "I'm the antagonist
Yep.
of Pereira's story, but his story, my story, his story,
Right.
history, that whole thing." which was a very nice line there that I could not replicate or duplicate myself because I'm not quite as smooth with it as Israel is. But for what you're saying, I mean, it was kind of the movie ending. It was the
Yeah.
storybook
Yep.
ending, like what the headline says. It for Israel Adesanya to be down 3-0, this guy that was really chasing legacy all along. That's why he takes fights like with Anderson Silva and
Mhm.
why he goes to an absolute war with Kelvin Gastelum before round 5 says, I'm prepared to die. Because whether or not you believe he really means it, the man is constantly chasing legacy. He strives to be the best fighter in UFC
Yeah.
history. That's what
Yeah.
his goal is. It's not about being the best middleweight, it's about being an all-time great.
Mhm.
But yet, this boogeyman who had followed him, and if you want to kind of set it up that way, not only was this the guy he couldn't get past in kickboxing, he goes, well, I'm going to go to MMA where I can build a bigger brand, where I can become bigger, make more money, and really leave a legacy in combat sports. He does that off to a great start. And then this guy who he could not get away from him in kickboxing comes to MMA, gets fast tracked into a title shot,
Mhm.
steamrolls Sean Strickland, and then knocks out Israel Adesanya after being up on the cards going into that fifth round. It shows the mental fortitude too. I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
and I don't think we doubted that for sure. Like I
Yeah, we
don't
even
I
mentioned it.
yeah, like his mental toughness is one of his best traits, and that showed through here. Um, God, I'll tell you what I to kind of continue your trilogy setup there. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind though that if in middleweight right now, the trilogy is the biggest fight to make.
For sure. Yeah.
And when the fight first ended, I was off. I want this trilogy. That's what I was saying. I was like, this has to be a trilogy
Mhm.
because both fights were awesome. Both fights had highlight reel endings. They were exciting. There's so much story to this rivalry. But
Yeah.
I do get your point that it feels like that was kind of the end of it. So like when
Yeah.
they do a trilogy bout, what is the story for that one? I
Right.
mean, I guess it's
Yeah. It's
who
weird.
takes the series in MMA, but then it's still if Israel won, it'd be 3-2. Like I get what you're saying. It feels kind of like the last thing for this rivalry to do was to have Israel get a win.
Yeah.
And so at first I was still very confident though. I'm like, you got to run this back. And I was even
Right.
thinking, Dom, interesting that the UFC hadn't committed to Stipe and John Jones for UFC 290 to
Mm.
headline. Perhaps this trilogy bout would be a fight that they'd like to see done on International Fight Week, July 8th. And then pretty much everything after the fight, all the post fight press conferences kind of told me that that's not the direction that we may be heading.
Mhm.
Um, Adesanya was very adamant about how he got his immediate rematch because of everything he's done in this
Right.
sport in this division. He's like, don't get me wrong, Pereira won the first fight in MMA, but he only got that title fight because of me, because
He
of
was
our
yes.
history.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's like, now that he's lost the belt, he's like, I think he needs to go through the same thing I went through to even get this belt in the first place. Like, he needs to go earn his way back, essentially kind of shooting down the idea of a trilogy with him,
Mhm.
which not saying that's why he's saying it, but can't blame him. Would not want to fight that guy again. But then you had Dana White at his portion was asked about it, and I figured he would be like, "Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world." No, Dom, he said he thinks Pereira is going to immediately move up to 205 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, not to mention Israel Adesanya also seeming to want to settle some beef with Dricus du Plessis. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if
I
you
saw
caught
that.
that. Would not reference him by name, but talking about wanting to drag his ass to South Africa.
Mhm.
That is a we'll talk about that. That is the interestings of being a really like I'm not even talking about the fight because I would highly favor Izzy in that
Yeah.
one. But in terms of the lead up, the story of that, because Drickus, saying he's the real, guys like him and
Yeah.
what was the other guy that
Cameron Simon, I think's
yeah,
his
they're the
name.
real African fighters, and you have that dynamic because you're having two white guys saying this to the three black African
Hmm.
champions. Even though again, African does not mean black or white, but when
Right.
you're in America, you're supposed to say African Americans and whatnot when you're talking about black people. And I think there's just be an interesting lead up when you
Hmm.
have that. Um, it might be a little messy, a little dirty, but that's what the fight game is. And I could see that lead up being very intriguing. However, I want to focus on the Pereira part of this 205 pounds.
Mm.
I'll ask you first, is it more likely for a trilogy to occur next or for Pereira to make an immediate move to 205 pounds? And if you choose the immediate move to 205 pounds, and even if you don't, this could just be a portion about that move at some point. We assume he'll go there. How does his ceiling changed by moving up 20 pounds? Does he become still a true threat to a championship, or by being, closer in size to a lot of those guys at that division, does his ceiling get lowered a bit?
I think his ceiling gets higher, Noah. I remember when he first beat Izzy, and I think it's even a clip that we put out. Kind of like, can he be a long-standing middleweight champion? I think was
Mhm.
like the main question focused on in that conversation. And I believe I said, yeah, I could see him doing a couple of things, but all in all, the matchups at middleweight are just tougher. So if he goes up to 205, I think he's an immediate threat. Not saying he's going to jump right into a title fight. He'll probably have to fight one against one of the top five guys, more than likely, and then get a shot. But you have the storyline there, first and foremost. Avenge Glover Teixeira, his coach, longtime training
Mm.
partner, that's with him in his corner in every single fight, to avenge him and get that title for him and his legacy. And I think that he can defend and match up better with people, the current state of 205, better than he can with some of these middleweights, man. And he's only going to fill out. I mean, look how big he is at middleweight. He's going to be bigger than some of the light heavyweights. I have no doubt in my mind. I bet he walks around at 230 pounds when he's not in a training camp. The guy's a specimen. So I think that will be next. I don't think the trilogy will happen. It just, again, everything about last night, the way it ended, just felt like that was it. The rivalry was incredible. It was so competitive, but that's it for now, at least. I think he goes to 205 next, gets a fight in. If he wins, challenges for a title. No telling who that'll be. It kind of is up in the air right now, the title picture and when it's going to get defended at light heavyweight. But yeah, I think all in all, the matchups are better. The way that he fights with some of them is just better for him. I could see him winning that title and defending that title more than what I could have seen him doing at 185 pounds.
Well, it's interesting because you did say you thought he had the makings of
Yeah.
being a long-standing champion at middleweight. That if he could have got past Adesanya the second time, fights with Whitaker or Vittori or whoever else in that 185 pound weight class, you thought he could be in your mind was favored to potentially win those. Um, right now, everything's telling me that Pereira making that move to 205 is what's more likely.
Hmm.
But I could see this being something that all of a sudden the direction changes here in a couple months. Because ultimately, I think what people are going to realize, especially those making the decisions in the UFC, is that there's no other fight for Israel to take at 185 pounds right now.
Mm.
I mean, Israel mentioned Drickus, but he's going to need another fight.
Right. Can you really see him getting a title fight next?
And
Yeah.
depending on who you put him against, let's say you give him like a Vittori. I think that'd be a great fight. But I'm not super confident in Drickus still. I'm still not just like I'm not all in on him, Dom. I know he keeps
Mm.
finding a way to win,
Yeah.
but he just does it in these ways where he looks so vulnerable, so gassed, so
Hmm.
just like done, but he keeps like dogging his way
Yeah.
out of there. And that's great. Those are great traits to have: his durability, his mental toughness,
Hmm.
his ability to, when push comes to shove, he just keeps going. But also, I think when he faces the elite of this division, he's gonna
Be tough.
have a
Yeah.
rude awakening. Now, I don't know if Marvin Vittori is that guy, but I do think that's an interesting fight. I'm just throwing it out there. But let's say, I mean, so if Dricus were to win, that'd be great, and then you can set that big fight up and perhaps do it somewhere in Africa. I know one of the reporters or on site talking to one of the journalists asked Dana about UFC Africa, and he mentioned how I believe Nigeria is putting in a pretty big arena
Okay.
right now. So I think it was like a 12,000 capacity arena, which I
Okay.
don't know if it'd be enough to host like an Adesanya fight. I think the capacity at this one in Miami, Florida was closer to 20,000.
Yeah.
So, um, but it's at least a start. And that's been something Dana's said about Africa. This idea you have three African born UFC champions, but the infrastructure
Yeah.
in Africa is not equipped for these massive UFC or
Events. Yeah.
boxing events or whatever. Especially when you're talking like pay-per-views. Like you have three
Yeah.
champions. Like, it's one thing to bring like a fight night. You put guys like Sadiq Yusuf on it or whoever, Dricus, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
might be. But that's not the direction people want. People want it to go big.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
put a couple of those champions on the card. Um, Regardless, Dom, it makes me think that in a few months that they may change course and try to get this trilogy booked. And it may feel somewhat strange. It might feel like, oddly enough, even though this is the one to settle the score in a lot of ways, it might feel like the story for this one just was more important to us, felt bigger to us. But I just don't see, if you're Pereira, you have another chance to win the 185-pound gold, and then that would help you even more in your move up to light heavyweight. That would be like, okay, that might get you an immediate title match at
Mm-hmm.
205. And you could try to get right that wrong that you just lost to Adesanya. Meanwhile, for Adesanya, if he wants to stay active, I don't see who he fights next. Do you think that the UFC could possibly give a third shot to Robert Whitaker?
There was actually one name I wanted to discuss,
Okay.
and
Oh,
it's
well,
someone that
yeah.
tweeted at Izzy
Okay.
last night and said to see you soon. Is there a world where Hamzat Chimaev comes back to 185 and immediately gets a title fight with Izzy?
I mean, don't get me wrong, Dom. I would be absolutely stoked for it.
Yeah.
I'd be stoked for it.
Yeah.
Is there any reason to give it to him outside of just the intrigue because he's a huge star? No,
Right.
he's not earned it at 185 pounds. But I've told
Yep.
you, Dom, the Colby situation has opened my mind to this fact that
Yep.
I'm done with I'm done fighting a good fight for the guys that deserve it. I've turned to the dark side. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
embrace the chaos of this sport. And yeah, actually, dare I say, Dom, the Hamzat Israel Adesanya fight is a fight I want to see more than a third MMA bout between Pereira and Izzy. And that's saying a lot for me
Yeah.
because I thought both these two fights that those two have had have been fucking awesome and have given us all-time moments.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Do you
think
do you agree with that? Like, is
no,
that the fight you want to see?
100%. And again, deserving, the word deserving aside, he's the biggest name. He's one of the biggest names in the sport right now. You pair him up with one of the other biggest names in the sport, that's probably because I remember saying whenever we did verbal that one of the biggest fights not made right now would be Colby versus Hamzat. Well, Izzy has the belt back now. Israel Adesanya versus Hamzat Chimaev for the title. It's probably this. I'm so close to saying the biggest, but I don't want to say it completely because of John versus Stipe. But
Oh,
Noah, it rivals John versus Stipe as the biggest fight the UFC can book through the rest of the
yeah,
year.
I'll be very curious to see once Hamzat inevitably is fighting for a title because I don't think it's a matter of if, it's a matter of when with
Win.
that
Yeah.
guy. I'll be curious to see how he appeals to the casual audience
Yep.
because I think there's a huge thing for him right now. Like I do
Yep.
believe he has the makings of being just a huge star and someone that you either love because he's kind of this, you know, this foreign gangster kind of, but also a guy that a lot of people love the hate. And
Yeah.
so we got a little bit, we had some pushback on that when we brought up that idea that he's embracing being the villain
Yep. Yep.
from back with all the mess that went down with UFC 279. But Dominic, I think it's pretty clear that this guy's embracing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's just embracing it. I think he is it. Like I
Yeah.
think, don't get me
He's-
wrong. You see, I'm sure he's a sweet fellow, but also I think he might just be a psychopath. Like I don't know. That's just he's a terrifying man, and I think the idea of him versus Izzy is gold. I think that Prince
Mm,
money.
mm.
Yeah, I would rather see it, and that's not easy for me to say because him versus Pereira 3 would be massive,
Right.
and would just both fights were great. Like there's no reason for them not to do it because it's 1-1.
Yep.
Each have a win over each other, right? And it's been two massive title fights. MSG, then here in Miami, first time in 20 years, biggest gate outside of what was it? Outside of Vegas,
Like
and
Vegas
MSG.
and MSG. Yeah.
And the fact that 20 years ago they made less than 500,000 as their gate. I mean, you everything tells me that you should just do a trilogy bout, but
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what makes it kind of like frustrating. I shouldn't say frustrating but Hamza, it's like he was so active out the gate,
I know.
and then all of a sudden it's just been really hard to
Yeah.
even have him in the octagon, and I don't know why that is. He seems to want to fight everybody, kill everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but then we haven't seen him since obviously the whole 279 fiasco. Kevin Holland, and that was really quick work for him.
Yep.
I mean, I'm ready to see him.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm saying that kind of makes me think that we'll be seeing him here pretty soon. But I don't know if it would be against Izzy because I don't know if the timeline would match up. I don't know.
What if they headlined International Fight Week?
I mean, just inject it, Dom. We'd have to go. We'd have to go. We have to go. We have to spend over $1,000 on tickets to go to that.
Man, I'm telling you, I could see it. I mean, all in all, literally, if you're thinking damage-wise for Izzy, took some shots, right? But it's 3 months away. Hamzat's gotta be ready. He hasn't fought since September. That's big time stuff for the UFC if they do it.
Yeah. We'll move on to the co-main event now as Gilbert Burns gets the unanimous decision over Jorge Masvidal in both of their home base state of Florida. The hometown of one Jorge Masvidal, Miami, Mr. 305, him versus Pitbull for that role,
Of
I
course.
guess. But
Yeah.
I'll just kind of start with a pretty simple question, Dom. Gilbert Burns wins unanimous decision. It was 30-27 on two scorecards, 29-28 on the third. I guess, how did this fight go compared to your expectations going in?
I guess nothing that surprising. I mean, Gilbert, I feel like he could have maybe grappled a little bit more, but again, Jorge's takedown defense is pretty good. On the feet, I think Gilbert was pretty competitive with Jorge, was going tit for tat with him basically. There was never really, honestly, the biggest moments on the feet were for Gilbert, as a matter of fact, when he had Jorge up against the fence and hit him with some really big hooks and some good straights. So, I mean, other than me thinking Jorge would I thought going in Gilbert would smash Jorge. That wasn't necessarily the narrative. But other than that, in terms of anything that went kind of differently during the fight, nothing that crazy. It was just more competitive than I expected. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm happy to see that Masvidal did not get embarrassed here. I'm happy that it wasn't as bad as you knew the possibility was that it could be. But that being said, I mean, Gilbert Burns outdid Masvidal everywhere here.
He's good, man.
And what's interesting is I actually agreed with the 29-28 scorecard. Now, Gilbert Burns had that great last 10 seconds of the round where he had the nice takedown on Masvidal and then landed a bunch of
the first round,
ground
right?
shots. Yeah, first round.
Yeah.
Bunch of ground shots right before the bell. But that entire round, I thought Masvidal was looking really good, really sharp. and Gilbert didn't seem to be looking to go with the grappling, and I was like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
this might be a huge mistake."
Yeah.
But then as the fight, rounds 2 and rounds 3, though, Dom, he basically, outlapped
Yeah.
Jorge. Like,
Yeah.
not only in round 2 did he get that takedown early and held that position for almost the entire round, landing some okay ground and pound, but really just holding position a lot, doing control time. But then round 3, he was landing bombs
Yeah.
on Masvidal.
Yeah.
And even though Jorge would, throw back a few good ones here or there, it was very clear who was being affected more by the other's power.
Yeah.
And it was clearly Masvidal that was wearing it. Gilbert was landing really good overhands. He really was trying to set up the same kind of punch that Kamaru Usman knocked out Masvidal with in
Yeah.
their second
Yeah.
fight. Came very close to landing it flush a few times, but I thought Gilbert Burns looked great. I'm not sure if this was the kind of performance that was going to win him over to the crowd, or you know, I'm not sure if it's the one. Someone even asked Dana at the post fight presser if they thought Gilbert could potentially be one of the biggest stars in the company, and I'm like,
Oh
all
wow.
right, jabroni,
Yeah.
slow your roll there.
Yeah.
We got to have a standard for this. I mean, I love Gilbert Burns, but I was like, all right, bud, like we just
Yeah.
gonna throw that out for everybody now. But at the same time, that's why, like, I felt like this was a really good performance. It's one that we can appreciate, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure if a lot of people who were tuning in for Jorge here are gonna
Right.
be as impressed. I think I could see it now watching this with like a bunch of people who never watch, just going, dude, he's just a pussy. He's just
Yeah.
wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what, and that kind of just leads us, like, because really there's nothing left to be said for the fight, and it's probably better to talk about Gilbert quickly before Jorge, because Jorge obviously retired. But and I see your question here: who do I want to see Gilbert fight next? And I think it's a great question. It's somewhat of a hard question, but at the same time, it's kind of easy to answer because, again, especially now that this fight is over, Colby's 100% next.
Yeah.
I surrender. That's it. I'm waving the white
I
flag. He's next for the
surrender.
title. I think it's Bilal and Gilbert Burns next. I think 100% that's the fight that makes sense. I think it should be a headliner. If they want to give it 5 rounds, or definitely get a high spot on a pay per view. If not, and the winner of that gets the title. I hate even saying that for Bilal because he does deserve it, but he wants to stay active. I saw a interview he did prior to the fight week as well, because he was in the corner of Baja Mondays, saying he realizes he's probably going to have to fight one more time. He's willing to do that. Nobody better than Gilbert Burns, right? I think that's what should be next.
I will raise this question. First, let me just talk. I'll talk about the fight that you brought up there about Gilbert taking on Bilal. I found it very interesting that seems like the pretty clear fight to make, since both guys are the
Right.
ones that feel like they're being passed over by Covington here. Make them duke it out. One of them is going to have to get a shot after
Yeah.
that. But neither guy, when asked about who they would want next or what they want to do next, said the other one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bilal said he wants Kamaru because that's the only
I
guy
did see
ranked
that.
ahead of him.
Yeah.
Gilbert said he wants to be the backup fighter for that title fight,
Okay.
which, I mean, I respect it, but also, like, I hope that's not a trend. After Dana gave Colby this title shot
People are
because
calling out to be
yeah, I
backups
don't
now.
want people to be getting on the mic saying,
Yeah.
I want to be the backup fighter. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
ugh, like
Yeah.
that's kind of, ugh. But if that's what I mean, Dana said done. Like he said, yeah, let's do it.
Mm.
So that would be cool, I guess. Maybe maybe that means Gilbert's getting the shot. But let me pose a question to you. I know we focused a lot on like, well, Bilal deserves it over Colby because of the win streak. But I'm curious now that if you look at Gilbert's run of late, he just beat Masvidal, he beat Neil Magny before, he had that absolute war with Hamzat. How did their resumes compare? Because I'm going to be honest
Yeah.
with you, Dom. I don't think it's so obvious after that win last night that Bilal is a clear leg up on Gilbert Burns in terms of who should get the next title shot. Because yes, Bilal has the win streak, but I would argue Gilbert's been through the gauntlet.
Right.
So
It's like a quality versus quantity type
A little
argument
bit.
here.
I mean, I it's hard to. I know wins matter. Like wins should move you along, but Gilbert took on Masvidal. Say what you will about Masvidal at this point, but he did it in Miami.
Yeah.
He did it as the guy that was going to be the away team in this situation. He ran through Neil Magny, which I think Neil Magny is a pretty comparable win to Bilal's win over Sean Brady. Some people
Yeah.
might disagree with me on that, but you look at who Bilal beat before that. You have Vicente Luque and Demian Maia. You know, I would say Luque is a comparable win to Masvidal. And, you know, beating Demian Maia, who was at the very end of his career, is fine. To be honest, I kind of value what Gilbert put up against Hamzat more. And maybe I'm just an idiot. Maybe I'm valuing a loss more than a win, probably as a crime against humanity.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I just don't think it's as like again, Bilal would have been happy if he got a title fight. I said it as such. But also, I don't think at this point, if Gilbert got a shot over him, I don't think that's like some crime,
Right. No.
either.
Yeah. I think I definitely agree. It'll be interesting to see what the UFC does with these two. I did forget that you're right because I watched the interview with Bilal and he was talking about fighting again, and he did say he wanted to fight Kamaru. So that really throws a wrench. If Bilal fights Kamaru, then Gilbert's really left in kind of no man's land, like no one else for him to fight because Hamzat's the only other one that they already fought, and he's going up to 185. It seems like so.
Well, you're forgetting someone.
Who I got to be forgetting a name.
You're forgetting Shavkat Rakhmonov, who
Shavkat is there
the
now.
UFC
Yes.
said they wanted the book against Bilal Muhammad.
Yeah.
I don't know if that fight's going to happen.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not saying Gilbert should have to take that fight. That man went through, had to face Hamzat Chimaev. And
Yeah.
what a baller move it'd be to take on the other boogeyman of this division. But I don't know. I kind of like having Shavkat in that mix somewhere. You know,
He has to be.
If Usman's going to take a while, you know, I don't know when we'll see Usman again. It wouldn't surprise me if we don't see him again this year. Like, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever see him again, to be honest with you. Like, it's very in flux right now. If guys like Bilal and Gilbert really feel the need, like, we need to earn this shot now, then Gilbert wants to step in and be that backup fighter, okay. Bilal, I think, should fight a guy like Shavkat because then you cannot be denied. You cannot be denied.
If you stop someone like Shavkat, yeah.
Or just beat him. Even if it wasn't an exciting fight, but he, like, you know, did his thing, grinded out a win, it's still Shavkat fucking Rakhmonov, who had become everybody's darling in this division. You know, it is not that much different than beating a Hamzat Chimaev. Like, those guys are looked at as two future champions who are on the precipice of greatness. They're on the precipice of earning that shot and being the best in the division.
But between Gilbert and Bilal, who do you think would be more likely to accept a fight with Shavkat?
Gilbert.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think Bilal's, the reasoning for picking Kamaru is because he's the only guy ranked ahead of him. So it's pretty clear Bilal's looking at rankings in this discussion.
Right.
Gilbert seems more, I mean,
he's just like, fuck it.
Yeah, well, yeah, he is, but he also was saying a lot of things at his post-fight presser. He was saying, if they won't give me a title shot next, then cut me. But then he said, but I'll be the backup fighter.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's I don't know what's going on with him, but it was interesting. Someone's gonna have to bite that bullet.
Yes.
Who really wants the title shot, I guess, is like, if you want it that bad, there you go. There's your opportunity right there.
Yeah.
I get it. It's not easy. I would favor Shavkat probably against both guys.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if either of those two guys won that fight.
No, not at all.
Because you look at Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal put up a really good fight against him. So
exactly.
So with that, well, actually, we got to talk about Jorge Masvidal now, Dominic, because he never actually said the words "I'm retiring," but I think everything he said in that post-fight, the first half of that post-fight speech, would tell you that he is at least done with MMA. He is done in the UFC. He has retired after this fight. I'm just going to ask you, Dominic.
Yeah,
what is Masvidal's legacy? And Is he a UFC Hall of Famer?
Mm, mm. So, well, what is his legacy? His legacy, first and foremost, I think, is just a guy that always was just a gamer. Hence the word game bred. He would fight everybody. It didn't matter who. I think this latter, essentially 2019 to now, overshadows really a lot of the work that he put in. I mean, he's been fighting for 20 years. That was his 52nd professional fight last night. I don't know if people even realize he's had that many fights. And even myself, I don't think I appreciate like the early days of Game Bread coming through, and he would always have these good fights, but he would lose these razor close decisions and yada yada yada. Because I think he has 16 losses now. 14 of them are by decision, and probably half of those are by razor close splits. That's what led to that rise in 2019. That kill or be killed. Now there's no more leaving it to the judges. So I think that's his legacy, just being a gamer, man, and always being willing to fight and being authentic. He was always so true to himself and really fit that Miami narrative, and he was proud to wear that on his shoulders. The Hall of Fame question. Man, sometimes I hate when we have these questions on here about some of these fighters. I think he will be put in the UFC Hall of Fame. I think what he did for the company, being a star and the pay-per-view buys, I think that goes a long way with them, right? With the UFC. But would I put him in there? Because what have I said now? You know, I said Donald. Obviously, he's getting in. I've said Jim Miller is getting put in. Or I think he should anyway, right? So what should I say here? I feel like to stay consistent with my own narratives, I should say that he does deserve the UFC Hall of Fame. But,
Come on,
you know,
Dom. Come on.
I'm saying I'm going to break that, I think, and say all in all, body of work is solid, challenge for the title, but compared to some other people that are probably still not even in the UFC Hall of Fame, probably not a Hall
Wow.
of Famer.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
You're gonna put Jim Miller in over Jorge Masvidal?
Mm-mm. I don't want to go back on myself, then it'll seem less authentic. So,
Well, I'm proud of you for sticking true to your guns. Don't let me bully you, son. All
well,
right.
I was going down the path to say yes because of the Jim Miller, and then I don't know what just happened there, honestly. But he's gonna be in.
Did you get
that
the
I
yips
don't
right
question.
there?
I don't know what just happened.
Was I looking you? Were you
I
looking
think
me
you
in the
got in my
eyes?
head. I feel like I thought you wanted me to say no. So then I ended up saying no, but then you're like, wait a minute. He actually should have said yes here. What's going on? And now we're here right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter all that much because we are not the guys making those decisions. And
Yeah.
if we ever have the chance to open up an MMA Hall of Fame, that's a tough discussion for him too. Because when you're talking about legacy with this guy, you got to look at 2019. I mean, 2019
That's a
is
year
that's his legacy. If you're talking about UFC career, this guy was essentially, what's the right word? Irrelevant.
well, I mean, a lot of even Colby was like calling him a journeyman, right? That
Yeah,
was kind of the
journeyman.
phrase.
He was irrelevant. He was just a middle of the pack, a face in the crowd. He had great wins. Don't get me wrong. He was a tough out for anybody. He had great fights, or close fights with Damian. Damian Maya had his back for like over 10 minutes and did not submit him. Like, this guy's had some very impressive fights, even in losing efforts,
Yeah.
but just a guy in the crowd, right? Then he does what I don't know how many examples of this there are in MMA, or even if you want to add in boxing, but then he goes and does like some reality show, which to me feels like the kiss of death. I don't know why, but I feel like this idea of a guy going to do a reality, like to me, that feels like career over. Not that I can even think of many examples of when that's happened. Somehow, comes back from that, has this like almost awakening, like in
Yeah.
his soul,
Yeah.
where he's like, you know what? I'm tired of handing these fights off to judges
Yeah.
who don't know shit.
Yeah.
He's like, so I'm not going to give him the chance. I'm going to start taking motherfuckers' souls. That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw this change in a guy. It's one thing to say these things, Dom. It's one thing to say, that this is you're more mentally prepared or you're this or that. But very rarely in my life, I've said things. I've said, I feel different when I do this, or whatever changes I've made, I'll say like, yeah, I feel different, whatever. But you really don't like you're still yourself. Like you still don't feel like a brand new person out of
Mm.
nowhere. But I swear with Masvidal,
Yeah.
it was like a switch, and
And we got to
just
witness it.
all of a sudden he was the king of Miami. He was Scarface. And you saw it in the performances. Yes, I know he's getting pieced up by Darren Till, but it was like halfway through that fight is
Bang.
when it just happened. It was like, this is it. Knocks him out. Then, of course, the reason that I think cements him as a UFC Hall of Famer, that 5-second knockout of Ben Askren, it's going to be played forever. It's the most easy clip to make in the world because it's 5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
John Anik couldn't even get out the whole Modelo ad. And then you follow that up with the BMF with Nate
Mm-hmm.
Diaz.
Mm-hmm.
Clear Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Um, I know after that, the 3 straight, like he had that year and then he wasn't quite able to take it all the way and get a title fight. But, when I think you look back on his career, you'll look at him as being one of those guys that didn't really need the belt. He is a Nate Diaz. He
Yep.
is
Yeah. Great point.
a Cowboy Cerrone. And these are clearly guys that belong in that UFC Hall of Fame. That's, again, neither here nor there. I know I got in your head, Dom, but
It's okay.
I've just, in my opinion, like I think that's his legacy that year. But I mean, if you want to look at MMA as a whole, I mean, I look back to when this guy was, you know, doing bare knuckle boxing fights or bare knuckle brawls, whatever you want to call it, with Kimbo Slice,
But on
in
YouTube
Florida on
with the
YouTube.
video camera.
Which I remember that, Dom. Like, I remember being a young kid. Like, I think I discovered YouTube around like 2008,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I was really young at the time, but I remember coming across like these videos and being terrified of
The
what I was
backyard
looking at.
fighting. Yeah.
And, I think that for some reason, that part of his career, being that this guy fought for free and now he's fighting for millions each fight. Like, at the end of the day, he never lost his love for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the money started to come through. You see fighters who treat it like a business, right? Who treat it like I'm a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get if you want me to fight, I got to get the biggest check possible. But with Masvidal, he always kind of did it for the love of the game in a lot of his
And the
career.
money came. Yeah.
And that's why, Dominic, I made sure to say in the setup here that it appeared he was retiring from MMA because I don't believe this is the last we're going to see of him in combat sports. Now, of
You
course,
think so?
he is a promoter for Game Bred Boxing, but that is a perfect way for him to continue on his career, Dominic. I think
Yeah.
we see him doing some appearances on his own Game Bred Boxing cards. What do you think about that?
I think it's definitely a possibility for sure. You're right. He left that door open without formally
He
saying
never
all the.
actually said the words
Yeah.
"I retired."
Yeah.
He said, "I started my career here 20 years ago." Never even said, "And this is where I end it." But he had the gloves off. Everything said, "This is it." But
Yeah, he just didn't dot the T's and or dot the I's and cross the T's. So I could see it. I definitely could, and maybe he even does one of the crazy boxing matches. Shit, maybe him and Nate get at it again and they box each other instead.
yeah,
I think there's definitely possibilities there. I just can't like make any predictions, but I do agree with you. I think it's not unlikely to see him do something in some sort of capacity again.
yeah. The idea of him boxing Nate Diaz might be too much. I don't know. I don't know where this game bred boxing can go. I don't know how realistic that is. I mean, it did get Roy Jones,
Yeah.
but I think even Anthony Pettis won that fight against Roy Jones. Maybe Jorge boxes Anthony Pettis. I mean, that would be very interesting. Yeah, I think you'll see him popping up in that kind of side of boxing for a few more years. I don't see him being like totally away from the sport. Even if, let's say, he never stepped foot in a cage in a ring again, I do think in terms of his actual promoting, I think you just see him more involved because he's got so many hands in these pots, Dom.
He
He's
really
got
does.
MMA, he's got bare knuckle, he's got boxing, like he's got all this shit, man.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see him just become like this have his own little side of the MMA space where he's just promoting all these different promotions. It'd be pretty cool.
Yep, I agree.
So with that, we will move on into the rest of UFC 287. The UFC Hall of Fame class of 2023 got a little bit more jam-packed as
This
we
year's
got
class, man. Wow.
yeah, as we got our fight to be inducted into the fight wing of the UFC Hall of Fame. And that fight, as my dogs are barking out there, that's great. Robbie Lawler versus Rory MacDonald 2 from UFC 189 in 2015. A fight that, to the hardcore fans, it's like saying, what's a good example to compare this to? Like, it's like saying your favorite movie all time is like The Godfather. You know, it's a safe pick, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
say this is your favorite fight of all time, it's like a very safe pick because it is truly an amazing fight. It gets better as it goes on.
Yeah.
And by the end, you just see two guys, one in Robbie, who refuse to quit, lip split open, just in his most primal form, while Rory MacDonald sits in a pool of his own blood, unable to continue because his nose had literally been shattered.
Yeah.
An amazing fight. It unfortunately probably shortened the best of both men's careers after that. Neither guy really was the same after that fight, but it completely deserves its place among the best fights, the most impactful fights in UFC history.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't even word it any better. It has those moments. It has the split lip from Robbie when he's holding the belt at the end on sitting on top of his coach's shoulders. It has the stare down Big John has to get in
Mm.
between and separate him. It has the big tide turning moments where Rory lands the head kick. Robbie comes back and bashes his nose to finish the fight. I mean, it checks the boxes, man, to be in the fight wing of the UFC Hall of Fame. And it did change both of their careers. You're damn right about that. Robbie was there in attendance. Man, I wish they could have had Rory there last night. I felt like that would have been a cool moment
Mm.
to have them both together, but that's just me trying to make things perfect, and nothing's perfect. But it's great for them. It'll be cool to see them both on the stage together to be inducted in July. It's going to be a special
Yeah,
moment.
I don't mind that Rory wasn't there last night, but it will be uh, less special if he's not there for
He
when
better
it's
be
inducted.
there. Yeah.
But I like when they announced Anderson Silva was going to be inducted, he wasn't in attendance
Yeah.
either.
True.
Um,
True.
I mean, they even said they tried to get him. You know, I'm sure they
Yeah.
tried to get Rory out there. Do you think it was for this feels like a fight that probably should have been inducted already? I'm curious, Dom. Do you feel like the UFC being petty? Rory MacDonald signing with the competition. He was with Bellator, and then he went
Yeah.
to the PFL. Do you think they were like, no, we ain't giving him the shine? But then as soon as he leaves the PFL, is retired, then the fight gets put
Yeah.
in. I
Yeah,
noticed that a little bit.
that might have a little say in it, I'd say. Just a
Yeah.
little bit of friendly competition there.
Yeah. But in terms of the actual fights on the rest of the card, Dominic, where do you want to start here? What standout performance fight do you want to focus on first?
You can't go anywhere else but to fucking Rob Font and Adrian
Yeah.
Yanez because the
Fuck
fight was
yes, dude.
sick. It was very short, 2 minutes and 57 seconds, but man, did it deliver throughout those 3 minutes. And Rob Font, man, he's got them hands. The New England Cartel, we've talked about time and time again on this show with him and Calvin Cater and all those guys up there in New England. And he needed it. Big moment for his career. Was on a 2-fight skid against big name guys, Jose Aldo, Marlon Vera. Felt like he was good, wasn't good enough to beat them. Took some time away, comes back here. Yes, takes a step back. Adrian Yanez takes his biggest step up. But to not only just go out there and beat the guy as an underdog, by the way, he was a plus 160 dog. Shout out to you. You did cash that one. Wish I would have tailed, but he didn't just win. He got a big time finish to solidify that I'm back. I'm Rob Font. If you forgot about me, here's your little wake up call. They got a featured spot on a big pay per view, and I'm proud that both of them were able to share that moment together. Adrian Yanez, nothing to hang your hat on, man. You had your moments. The only real thing with Adrian is it seems like every fight he's getting in danger. He's getting hurt in a lot of these fights. So back to the drawing board he goes, but it's no shame here. It's just a huge bounce back for Rob Font that felt very much needed to kind of reignite his career. And it leaves me thinking, okay, maybe there is something. Maybe there is still a run in Rob Font, Noah.
Yeah, this was the outside of Adesanya, I would argue he's the biggest winner of
Yeah.
this entire night.
Yeah.
Not only did he, as a plus 160 underdog when I took it, um, get a win against a rising prospect in Adrian Yanez, who a lot of people were riding on here, I felt like. But everything you just said, he had had two pretty deflating losses in the sense of he outstrikes his opponents but can't hold up to the punishment like they
Mm-hmm.
can, Ronaldo and Vera. And here, though, we knew this was going to be a boxing type fight. It was going to be a striking fight. Neither guy all that much of a threat when it comes to their wrestling. Rough fight, from time to time. But Adrian Yanez, I don't believe, has ever shot a takedown in his UFC career. And Dominic, I think that's ultimately what did Yanez in here. Not that, again, not saying like that I would expect him to have the wrestling to, dominate a fight or anything. But the fact that these two were in the pocket, Yanez actually landed some really, his power took an immediate impact on Rob Font.
Yep. The eye. Yep.
I was really nervous about that. I was like, well, if Rob Font doesn't get him out of here, that might, by round 3, this fight might be done.
Yeah.
And maybe that added a little bit of urgency to Font there. But it felt like when they were in the pocket swinging, Font, I think, landed a really hard punch on Yanez. And Yanez felt that and was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh shit. But the problem, Dominic, is I don't think Yanez really has another way he feels confident in winning a fight. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's very dependent on the power in his boxing and his just boxing capabilities overall, his striking capabilities
Yeah.
overall. I don't think he feels confident in like taking a fight to the ground to try to clear the cobwebs or
Mm-hmm.
clinching up and holding a guy against the fence. I think that he is supremely talented, but I think this here put a pretty big hole in terms of his overall game that he needs to work on. And it's
Yeah.
just making him more well rounded.
Yeah.
You'll be good enough to beat a lot of guys that are right now ranked higher than him, or even unranked, but guys that maybe have a better resume. That boxing's good enough to beat a lot of those guys right now. But in a matchup like this, when you have a guy who can match your boxing
Yes.
technique,
Yep.
he can match your power, you might need a little bit more. Font at least has the capabilities to wrestle. He has shown that he will wrestle from time to time. He at least can threaten with it just a little bit. Yanez has not quite added that to his game as of yet. So I know Yanez actually mentioned that he was working a lot with like some Muay Thai striking in this camp. And what's funny though is Rob Font was the one that was getting the collar ties, like getting
Yep.
the he
Uh-huh.
was the one that was doing that effectively, which I believe is like a Muay Thai maneuver.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just landing massive shots. I said, that right hand from Rob Font that put down Yanez that pretty much finished this fight. I said, did that fucking right hand have the infinity stones attached to it? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
my God. Like he fucking like a slingshot wound that bitch up and just just fucking knocked his ass out. And I was like, God damn, like what a punch. I mean, that you saw it later with the Izzy fight, like some really fucking sick knockouts here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, there was no denying that stoppage. I know Yanez was very unhappy afterwards, but you guys have to understand the man just got knocked out.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to really think straight in a moment. You just went out. In your mind, you literally just closed your eyes and opened them and you're back. Like you don't know. It's
Yeah.
just take it easy on the guy. Just like what we're gonna talk about with Ponzinibbio here in a second. Like
Mm.
it's these guys they were out, man. Like if they continue to fucking say that shit like in the months later, then you can criticize them for it. But for now, great win for Rob Font. I think this fight will make Yanez better, but I
Yes. Thank
expect
you.
that
I was
this
gonna
will
say that.
not set him back. Like it sets him back for now, but I still think if you come this time next year, 2 years from now, and he's taking on Rob Font's the number 8 guy, number 6
6.
guy. When let's say he takes on the number 6 guy in a division 2 years from now, I think he'll be ready for it that time.
Yeah, it felt like to me one of those fights where, yes, it's big for both guys, but in two different ways. Rob solidified he's still here, maybe better than ever. For Yanez, he's that young prospect that just got that wake up call. I think it's that type of fight that sends him back to the gym hungrier than he's ever been, because he now realizes, okay, if I'm going to be a player with the top dogs, this is what I got to do to improve, to ensure I can win these types of fights more often than not. That's what I liked about this one.
Yeah, and I'll just keep going down. The next fight, Kevin Holland gets the 3rd-round knockout of Santiago Ponzinibbio, 3 minutes, 16 seconds of that 3rd round. This was a very competitive fight.
Yeah.
I think both guys looked pretty good here. Kevin Holland's length and reach and the speed with which he's able to strike with was obviously causing issues for Ponzinibbio, and the fact he can keep that distance due to his reach and length and all that. Meanwhile, Ponzinibbio was pressuring pretty much the whole time, was throwing great leg kicks. I mean, Kevin Holland's legs were fucked up, it felt like. And ultimately, though, Kevin Holland lands the big shot in round
Big one.
3. First off, a really impressive knockdown sequence in the end of round 1 when Ponzinibbio had caught one of Kevin Holland's leg kicks and was kind of holding his leg up in the air. And Holland threw a fucking back fist while only on one leg that dropped Ponzinibbio, nearly was able to finish that fight in the 1st round. But Ponzinibbio came back strong, man. He seemed to clear the cobwebs out and put up a good fight. But Kevin Holland got it done in round 3. It's kind of this is about what I thought we'd get with this fight. I thought there was a chance Holland might run through him a little quicker. Just a lot of physical advantages for Kevin Holland here.
He was so much bigger.
Yeah, he can at 170, man. He is a real nightmare for guys. But I think the biggest nightmare to Kevin Holland is himself sometimes. Just like putting himself in the right frame of mind to go in there and get a win. Here, it felt like he was in that mindset. Like he fought more composed. He fought with a stronger IQ. But I guess, Dominic, did this win for Holland, did it change or not change your perceived, ceiling for him? Because we kind of talked about that Friday. Can Kevin Holland really be more than he is now? With the win, the way he did it, the performance, did that change anything in your mind about where you think he can go from here?
I think for now, he's pretty much dead even with where I thought he was on Friday. Like, it's not definitely a good win to beat Ponzinibbio. And I still, real quickly, just a side tangent. It's such a shame Ponzinibbio had to go through all the medical issues that he did, because all of his prime years got stolen away from him. It's really a shame. I just wanted to say that. But for Kevin, yeah, man, I feel like there's something in there. 30 years old, in those prime years, it's there. There's something there that can make a run and make noise in this division. It's just like, will we ever get to see it? I think that's the question I'm putting in my head, and that's why I'm staying kind of even keel right now. Am intrigued by what his next matchup could be, because again, they gave him the Wonder Boy fight, but it was kind of like almost like a reward for accepting the fight with Hamzat, I felt like. Right. But then he went from that to way back out of the rankings against Ponzinibbio. So maybe this next fight, depending on who it is, the type of matchup that it is, what he can do in the cage, how he approaches that fight, everything, the whole buildup, and then the result of that next fight could be the turning point for me, or the final nail in the coffin where I just say, okay, this is where Kevin is. This is where Kevin stays.
Ponzinibbio was unranked going into this fight.
Yep, outside looking in.
Well, I think that doesn't really speak to the kind of fighter he is either.
No,
I do think he is like the kind of guy that would be a top 15 level fighter in any other weight class. But is as much better as Kevin Holland holds up at 170, or as much more of an advantage it is for him to fight at 170. It's also a tougher weight class for him to advance in,
That's a good
I know
point.
At 185, I know he ran into Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori in back-to-back fights, and those dudes are two of the toughest wrestlers in the division. But look at 170. Look at the guys that you could potentially be going up against. Obviously, Hamzat will be probably moving to 185, so don't have to worry about him anymore. But just the guys we've already talked about, Dom. Okay, Leon Edwards is your champion. I mean, that's not necessarily a nightmare matchup because Leon's not necessarily a guy known for his wrestling. Or, I mean, I guess the leg kicks actually would be something in that fight. But if you go outside of him, you got Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Bilal Muhammad,
Mm-hmm.
Shavkat Rakhmonov, Gilbert Burns.
Yeah.
I think Kevin Holland, where he sits now, is about where he'll be.
Yeah.
I saw Mac Malley, I think, was the one that tweeted this, which I'm not sure if this tweet's really fair to either guy. I mean, I know Max usually this is more for comedy. So, but he said, Kevin Holland's really going to Cowboy Cerrone the shit out of his career, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, do you think that's a fair way to put it? Like, or is that kind of a disservice to either guy? Like, I don't know.
I think as of right now, I have no reason to like say otherwise. I mean, even like in terms
I
of skill set wise, they're kind of similar
well,
too in a way.
what's interesting is I get the the comparison. Like, I feel like Kevin Holland is on his way to being that type of guy, but I maybe it's just me, but I never felt like Donald Cerrone ever the biggest mark on his career was that he just failed to show up in the
And
biggest
the big
moments.
ones.
In the big
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
But in terms of like Kevin Holland has actively fought against what he should probably do for the safest way to get a win in order to
Mm.
put on a show. I don't know if I could say Donald Cerrone ever necessarily did that. Like, I don't know if it's really the most accurate comparison because I felt like Donald just wasn't quite good enough to be a champion, but was just a very fun fighter, a great fighter, a
Mm-hmm.
guy that fans easily liked, had a great personality, and he did a lot of good for the sport. But I don't think he necessarily fought. I don't think his IQ necessarily. I don't ever remember him fighting against what he should do to just put on a show.
Right. Right. Yeah. I got
So,
you
but I
there.
could see Kevin Holland. I feel like he is going to be that kind of Cerrone type guy in his career. I feel like that's where we're heading with him.
Yeah, like a whoever, whenever type of
Yeah.
mindset. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I agree.
where do you want to go next?
Well, I guess I
Well,
I
you know
don't
we're
even
gonna
want
hit
to.
both of them, Dom. Just
Yeah,
pick
I'm
one.
going to Gastelum Curtis then because holy shit balls, this is one of the best fights of the year. Surely it got the official fight of the night. I'm assuming last
Yep,
night I didn't
it
see
did.
the awards.
Yep.
Okay, thank goodness that would have been the biggest just robbery in the history of all things MMA related. This fight was so sick. God, I wish it was a 5 round main event after what we got to see last night. It was so incredible. Kelvin it was such a perfect comeback fight for Kelvin in the sense of like the name value of the opponent, the ranking of the opponent, so on and so on. And Curtis is just such a dog. He's had, I think that was his 6th UFC fight last night. And really, all of them have been so, so good. He's been so active since he joined in because he knew and he said it from that first fight. I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. He realizes that he's had a long career already. That was his 40th professional fight last night, as a matter of fact. So that was just absolutely a war of attrition between two guys that just they wanted it. They wanted to win. Kelvin borderline needed it, honestly, for his career. And Chris was looking to really kind of he's had momentum, but he really needed to take that momentum to the next level. And although he came out on the losing side of things, his momentum is higher than what it was going in. So this was just awesome. It couldn't have went better from a fan's perspective because we all felt like it would be good, but I don't think, at least me, I didn't think it was going to be this damn good, Noah.
Well, it's hard to know if a fight will be like that good, but I
Yeah,
definitely thought this was the fight of the night, like
yeah,
potential written
potential.
all over it. Just because both guys are super durable,
Yeah,
but both guys come to bang. I mean, they
yeah,
really go for it, and they're just dogs, man. And that's what you got here. It was a dog fight.
yeah.
Kelvin Gastelum gets the edge on the cards, probably rightfully so. We both had money on Chris Curtis, so I mean, it's kind of tough, but at the same time, um, this was the kind of fight Kelvin Gastelum needed. Sort of, I don't know if I could say it's the fight he needed. But I think the showing in terms of it was a big moment of the night, the best fight of the night, and he gets a win. I think it's exactly the recipe he needed to kind of bring him back to the relevant side of this division.
And you
Because
saw what it meant to him afterward too,
yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, you look at his last 5 fights, the one win in there is Ian Heinisch, who is not in the UFC anymore. And then you look at
Yeah.
those 4 losses, and they're all still relevant guys in the UFC. So to get a win over a guy who is relevant, in my opinion, Chris Curtis, tough guy for anybody to fight. You know, this was the kind of this is what we needed to see from Kelvin, and I'm happy to see it. I don't take any pleasure, even with money on these fights. I don't take any pleasure in a guy like Kelvin, who is only 30 years old,
Yeah.
potentially being washed out of the sport. That
Yep.
doesn't bring me any pleasure just for a quick, profit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Anything you want to see next for Kelvin? Is there any fight?
Ooh.
This kind of probably putting you on the spot because I don't know
I'm
if I quite have.
Yeah, I mean, obviously fighting up. I'd say like I can't really think of the back half of that division right now, but there's matchups to be had
Can I
there.
tell you a
Kelvin's
fight? Can I tell you a fight I'd love to see for him? It probably
yeah.
doesn't make sense right now. In fact, I would say it definitely doesn't make sense for him right now. But Dricus Du Plessis, we just talked about him.
Oh, it'd be crazy.
I mean, that's a crazy fight.
That's a dog fight for sure. That one.
You
Yeah.
could everybody's gonna people might favor Dricus because where he's at in the division right now. But again, it's hard. Dricus just had that they're as a betting man, Dom, the fade is coming for Dricus. It's coming eventually.
The fade is hold on. I'm just looking here. We got Andre Muniz, Brennan Allen, Imavov, Hermanson. Ooh, Roman
Delidze?
Dolidze.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
that's cool. Opening our main card, the 18-year-old Raul Rosas Jr. was getting a huge opportunity here, Dom. Fortunately, he loses that opportunity. He loses the fight via unanimous decision to Christian Rodriguez. How about that, Dom? A guy that was our age, 25 years old, and he was 7 years the elder in this fight. That's a
Yeah,
very weird dynamic in this fight. Is Christian Rodriguez like the vet, 25 years old? Like
yeah, yeah.
for most fights, he'd be the biggest of prospects, but here he's like the veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Story here: Raul Rosas Jr. put on a crazy pace at the beginning of the fight. He spammed shoots for takedown attempts. Round one, he eventually did get it there. He threatened with the rear naked choke multiple times, but man, Christian Rodriguez doing a great job fighting the hands,
Great
just
defense.
staying alive, basically. And, we were kind of sitting there. I'm sitting there towards the end of round one, and I'm going, man,
Mm-hmm.
really putting up a pace there. As a young kid, right? Like a guy who's maybe a little bit nervous for such a huge opportunity. And yeah, rounds two and rounds three, uh, not very close.
Mm-hmm.
Rodriguez kind of bullied him some.
Yeah.
He did that for the last 2 rounds. And even round three was pretty tough. I mean, it was you had Raul Rosas on the ground, Rodriguez and Mount just
Dominated him.
dominate him.
Yeah.
So obviously, shout out to Rodriguez first off for cashing as he wasn't like a huge underdog in terms of betting odds, but I think in terms of public opinion, he
It
was a
felt,
huge
yeah.
underdog.
Yeah. Yeah.
He did miss weight, unfortunately, but this is going to be a great badge of honor win for him. I think to move forward. He's 2-1 now in the UFC. JPP, his only loss up
Mm-hmm.
to this point in the UFC, was a decision loss. But obviously, our discussion is going to be focused on Raul Rosas Jr. here. 18 years old. I got to keep that in mind. But he loses here when he was given such a big opportunity. I mean, I even told you my little cousin's texting me asking
Mm-hmm.
me about Raul Rosas Jr. It's clear this kid had a lot of potential, and not just potential in terms of fighting capabilities, Dom, but potential in terms of, I guess, even star power here.
Mm-hmm.
Like he could be a real massive story. He was talking the talk. He's
Yeah.
saying he would finish Aljamain Sterling if they fought now. He's saying he wants to be the youngest champion in UFC history. What do you take away from this? How big of a setback, how big of a fumbled opportunity is this for the young kid?
I don't know if it's necessarily a fumbled opportunity for him. I almost feel like it's a fumbled opportunity for the UFC. Like a little bit of
Mm,
egg on their face. And I don't blame them for trying to really get behind Raul and make something big of him. You don't get, at the end of the day, you don't get people coming on to Contender Series where their parents had to sign a waiver for them to fight. That just doesn't happen very
yeah,
often. So I understand it. But credit to you because you said it on Friday's show too. You were just kind of hesitant on, and we talk about pushes for young people a lot, but it's more so their level of competition. This was a push of he's 18, he's had one fight in the UFC, and now you're making him open a main card. That's that's a lot of
yeah.
pressure for anybody that's like a prospect, but especially when you're an 18-year-old, you were literally just a kid not even a year ago. But for Raul, I think it's got to be a moment for him to really be humbled for sure. Because he was confident. He was borderline cocky, even, I'd
I would
say.
say he's cocky, yeah.
Yeah. So it was definitely a humbling moment, a slice of that humble pie, if you will. But, I still think there's something there. It's hard to really say that there is or isn't because he's so young and so green. It just has to be a big wake up call to slow the roll. You have so much time. Like literally, he even with this loss, he still got time to become the youngest UFC champion ever. That's 5 years away.
Right.
That it'll be 2028 and he still has a chance to become the youngest champion ever. Chill out, relax, go to the gym, mold your game better and better. Take these fights fight by fight. Don't look at who the champion is and if you can beat him. Focus on every fight. And I'm not a fighter, I don't train, but that's literally would be my advice to just a younger person in Raul Rosas Jr. being 18 with all this money now and the opportunities and the eyes on you. You can't get caught up in it. I think that's the biggest thing for me in terms of a takeaway.
I want you to look 3 or 4 years ahead right now into the future. I don't know if this is a perfect comparison. I'm trying to think of really young fighters here.
Mm-hmm.
In 3 to 4 years from now, is Raul Rosas Jr. closer to like a Macy Barber or closer to a Chase Hooper?
Ooh, good names to choose. Um, whew. Man, that's tough because Macy in a way is kind of more well-rounded than them. Chase and Raul are very one-dimensional, but very, very good in that aspect.
Mm,
But it's shown that when that aspect doesn't work for them, they falter. I mean, Chase
mm.
Hooper got knocked out in his
Yeah,
last fight, if I'm
that's
not
that's
mistaken.
interesting how you're kind of the direction you're kind of it seems like you're going in your heads like almost fight styles, like kind of
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm actually thinking more from like Macy had a couple stumbles on her way
Mm-hmm.
to wanting to be she was talking a big game, wanting to be a champion, but now she's bounced back and made herself a relevant player again in
Mm-hmm.
that kind of back half of the top 10, top 15 type fighter. While Chase Hooper's sort of washed out at this point, he's kind of been a guy that I think a lot of people have sort of written off. So that's what I was more
Yeah.
getting at. Like in 3 to 4 years, what's more
Where
likely
can they
for
be?
Roses?
Yeah, I think I would still lean with the Macy Barber side at 3 or 4 years being a, 14, 15
Mm,
ranked guy potentially. I think that's definitely possible. But the Chase Hooper effect, and this is not even a slight to Chase Hooper, this is no disrespect, but it's just the way that the cookies crumbled with him so far in his career. I think it's possible if Raul doesn't really dial it in here that he could find himself in that boat too. I think both are possible, but the
mhm.
Macy route is more possible right now.
Yeah, now that the fight's taking place, I can kind of go back to what I was saying on Friday about just being this was a big risk but big reward scenario for the
Yeah.
UFC and putting Rosas Jr. in this position. They were criticized for it. Even Chris Curtis.
Hmm.
Hashtag Chris was right. he said, he really called out them putting this 18-year-old who hadn't proven anything on a main card over a fight with him and Kelvin Gastelum. And, obviously that turned out to be kind of for good reason. But um, for the UFC, they looked at it as like this is a high risk, high reward. And the risk is being, Dom, that if the fight went how it actually ended up going, where Rosas looked great early, but gassed and then kind of got bullied down the stretch, did not look great rounds 2 and 3,
Mm-hmm.
that you are exposing this kid to a very major part of your audience at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Because if you kept him as like the first fight of the night, and let's say it was on this card or even on like an Apex fight night or something, if he loses, oh well. Kind of like Chase Hooper. Like Chase Hooper's
Yeah.
lost a few times, but yeah, I know he's not really all that relevant anymore. No disrespect, Chase. I know you're doing good things for Fight Pass and whatnot, but um, like most of his losses though, Dom, were on more lower
Right.
cards. Like,
Not as many eyes.
yeah, and with Rosas, they really went all in on him being this, and I think that's part of the reason I kind of fell for it in a way, because even though I was worried about it and worried about how quickly they might push him with a win, I still thought he was going to win this fight at the end of the day. And I
Yeah.
think that's because of how confident the UFC seemed to be in putting this guy in this position. I was like, man, that is a lot for the. I mean, don't get me wrong, he looked great in the Contender Series, he looked great in his first fight, but he's going to obviously be continuing to move up the ladder. And I was like, Christian Rodriguez isn't a bad fighter by any means,
No.
but I just, I don't know. I was like, well, the UFC seems so confident because they're giving him these big placements when he really hasn't proved anything yet. You
Mm-hmm.
think they might kind of bury him a little bit on a card to protect him, so that way, if
Yeah.
what happened happened. But now, Dom, yes, it's still not the end of the world because he's going to obviously continue to improve. He's going to get older, more
Mm-hmm.
more experience, better IQ, all that. But it's going to take a while for the audience to shake off that stink of this performance. This was the first time a lot of people were exposed to this kid that they had been hearing about all week, and it did not leave the best taste in the mouth, I'm sure, for a lot of people.
And even in a losing effort, the fight wasn't that fun either. So there's not even
Yeah, no,
takeaways there and saying,
right.
well, he was at least exciting. He doesn't even have that to fall back on. So it, I'm very curious to see how he's going to approach his next fight mindset wise more than anything.
Mhm. Well, Dom, that's it for the main card and then the head of our prelims. As we look down the rest of the prelims, is there anything else you want to touch on?
B. Joe Pyfer. The dude's about
Mm,
the life, Noah. The dude's
yeah.
got hands, but the dude's good. He's a smart, capable fighter, but when he finds the opportunities, he puts people away, man. He put away Gerald Meerschaert, a guy that had probably triple the amount of experience that Pyfer has in terms of like professional MMA fights. And he just looked good, calm, composed, found the moment, bam, and it was over with. So he, and his story, man, like he fucking just, it means so much to him in the post fight interview, man. Like his parents didn't care about him, and he's been doing this since he was 4, and this is what he loves, and was homeless, and all these things.
Dude, can you believe that this guy lost on the Contender Series his first time out? He had
Yeah.
that nasty ass shoulder separation or whatever when he was getting slammed.
Yeah.
Does not look like the same guy who fought on the
No.
Contender Series first time. I mean, what an evolution for him.
Dude, it's like a guy that's had second chances in life and in the fight game, right? Loses
Mm,
on the Contender, like Noah just said, gets a second chance, bam, capitalizes on it. It was remember how bad the card was that night? The only standout, Joe Pyfer,
yeah.
Dana White, B. Joe Pyfer, B. Joe Pyfer. It was a Ultimate Fighter Season 1 moment from Dana, the way that he was talking about him. And he has delivered and lived up with both of his UFC fights thus far since then. I'm a believer in this guy. I love to see what he can do next. I really think he has like legitimate serious potential.
Well, what's legitimate serious potential mean?
Let's see. GM3, what is he? Probably like a borderline 25, top 20 guy. One more fight for Joe, wins that, gets him in the top
I
15.
mean, realistically, right now, I know this is a lot to ask, but I mean, I'm just gonna straight up be like, in your mind, can you picture him with the belt wrapped around his waist?
Ooh, that might be too much for me to go right
Yeah.
now, but
Well, I just was curious because you were saying like serious. So you mean like
yeah,
top 10, top 5 type
I
range?
think if he continues consistently down the path we've seen him on, yes, I
Yeah.
definitely think we could see him
I
there in
think
a
that's
couple
very
years.
fair. I thought this was going to be the fight that was either going to make or break him. you know, and in a
Yeah,
lot of ways it
it's
probably
not an
was.
easy fight, man.
No, it wasn't at all. I think GM3 is very good and also is just a high finishing rate as
Yeah, he's
well.
dangerous.
Dangerous everywhere. And Joe Pyfer was made by the fact that he was an exemplary performance on a card that had none. And
Yeah.
that's always stuck with me, Dom. I was like, yes, this B. Joe Piper thing's great. And it was organic. And Dana was
Yeah.
just trying to make a point about guys fighting on the contender series need to go for it. But it
Mhm.
somehow it snowballed into where it turned Joe Piper into this like bubbling star almost
Yeah.
in the UFC. And yes, he had a great debut in the UFC and all that. But I was still like a bit of like what happened with Raul Rosas is what I was worried might happen
Mhm.
here with Joe Piper, where yeah, it seems like this organic kind of thing happened where all of a sudden he's kind of this bubbling star, but I'm not quite sure if like that's earned yet. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's looked great in two performances, contender series and UFC. Not great competition, but you
Mhm.
know, it is what it is. But and one of those the thing that really kicked it off was just the fact that he was the best thing on a card that had no good things on it.
Yep.
You know, so I was a little worried about it, but here, no, I'm in to see where how far he can take this. I like him
Mhm.
quite a bit.
Mhm.
I'll just mention Sam Hughes getting a big win over Jaqueline and Amorim,
Yeah.
and I'm and unfortunately for Sam, I wish I could just say that. I wish I could just say great win. You know, get you to 3-4 in the UFC. But why'd you have to do it, Sam? Why'd you have to? Why couldn't you just stop talking? Why couldn't she just stop talking,
Mm. Mm.
If you guys didn't see, she was talking to the media after her fight, and she said that her boyfriend had bet $1,000 on her to win, and that she wanted all of it.
It's a
And
big bet, by the way.
that's a big bet that I don't believe you're supposed to be able to do. Because it's still the UFC had that policy that came out. It's all is, of course, based on the James Krause situation. No fighters, no coaches, no corners, no teammates. Basically, nobody in the sport, including family members and significant others, all that are allowed to bet on MMA.
Yeah.
Does the boyfriend, is that the loophole that they're not married?
You know,
I don't know.
that could be the fine print there potentially. No, and I just wanted to say quickly, me and Jake were talking about it last night because we saw that you sent that in.
I did not see Branson's response, by the way, until I went to bed at like 2:30. So because he was asking, "Isn't this legal?" And I was like, when I went to bed, I'm like, "Wait, I thought it wasn't legal. I don't know." Like,
Right. It- we were just saying that, like, wouldn't it, like, is there really a problem if a boyfriend bets on their significant other to win? Wouldn't it be a little weird if they bet on them to lose? Isn't that when there's kind of a big problem?
well,
That
Dom,
was
that's
like our
no
just
Dom.
question.
Wait, okay, hold on. Yes, no, that's like that's what they're trying. They don't want people like apparently what's perhaps being investigated on is this idea that James Krause might have tipped people off. I'm assuming
Right.
this is what there's a worry about in terms
Yeah.
of why they're investigating. That James Krause could have potentially tipped off people in his circle, in his betting circle,
To bet on
that
men or to lose.
Derek Minner had this
Yeah.
injury and the
Yeah.
bet on Nerd and Becky, and that's why all this movement happened.
Right. Yeah.
The reason this policy is put in is because of that. Like they don't want that kind of shady shit of
Yeah.
like betting against someone because you know they have an injury or they're going to throw the fight or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. But you can't, it's hard to just monitor. I mean, it's the same reason Pete Rose got banned from
Mm.
baseball. Yeah, you can say you always bet on them to win and whatnot, but it's very hard to monitor who you're betting on, who you're betting against. Like,
Hmm.
that's why you just do a blanket, just don't bet
Yeah.
at all.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand. I'm just saying I don't really expect much to happen of
Well,
this,
that's
to
the
be
big
honest.
issue. The big issue is betting. If it came out that the boyfriend had bet against her to win, and then she lost the
And she
fight,
lost, they're
that would
fucked.
be a
Yeah.
massive. That would be a bigger issue than what happened here on Saturday.
Right.
But unfortunately, the way the policy is
It
worded,
covers it all. Right.
it sounds like it's still no big no. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but
Yeah.
hopefully, it was a big win for her. So I hope not, hopefully she comes out okay from it.
Yeah, I hope so.
So with that, we will move on to the fight announcements portion of the show. Got two of them here, Dom. June 10th, the UFC announced that UFC 289 will be held in Vancouver, in Canada. The original kind of planned location was Calgary, I think, but I think because the Calgary Flames position and that they will probably or maybe still be in the NHL playoffs when
Mm-hmm.
this card's going on, they had to move over to Vancouver, and the Vancouver Sharks are terrible. So, at least I think. I don't watch hockey that much, but we did get our headliner announced: Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena, part trace, June 10th, UFC 289, and Bo Nickel.
Mm.
After this has already been kind of out there because Trayshawn Gore, who will be Bo Nickel's opponent, had put on his Instagram this fight was happening. Well, now Bo Nickel has confirmed this fight will be happening July 8th, UFC 290 International Fight Week. Makes all the sense in the world to put Bo Nickel on that kind of card. Trayshawn Gore, I think, is an appropriate next opponent for Bo Nickel, who did have a great last performance against Jamie Pickett.
Yep.
But, Trayshawn Gore, I would say, is a slight step above Jamie
I think
Pickett right
so.
now. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a fair. Bo Nickel looked good against Jamie, but let's take our time, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I'm actually going to ask you, instead of doing what I normally do and just kind of let you give your thoughts, both good or bad, I'm actually going to ask you some questions about Amanda Nunes, Juliana Pena 3, because been a lot of discussion about it in the Twitterverse since this fight was announced. First question.
Mm-hmm.
Is Juliana Pena the right next opponent for Amanda Nunes' bantamweight title? And is this the type of fight that should be main eventing a UFC pay-per-view?
I figured those were basically the two questions. I don't have a problem with them doing the trilogy. At the end of the day, it's 1-1. I know the second fight was very dominant, one-sided for Amanda, but it's 1-1 at the end of the day. And there's no other storylines really at bantamweight. The division has been in a stalemate for the last, I don't know, 9 years, basically, it feels like. So I don't have an issue here with Juliana getting a shot, Holly getting a shot, Rocky getting a shot, or Aldana getting a shot. It wouldn't have mattered. Any of the four could have got it. This one has the biggest storylines out of all of them. Maybe Julie can pull off the upset one more time. So I don't care. That's fine doing the trilogy. Main event, I think it's hard to really hype it up as a main event worthy fight because of how one sided and dominant the second fight went. But I'm just going to assume it came down to, well, no other champions are available. We're trying to get into Canada. This is what we can do for June. As long as they have a solid undercard booking under it, then it's okay. I'm never gonna say these people shouldn't get a main event over others. It's just a matter of kind of what was available, and I'm assuming that's what it was. So
Really? Because I kind of look at it like, all right, you already had this huge stretch booked: UFC 284, 285, 286, 287. A lot of big fights in there, right?
mhm.
And 287, sorry. And then 288, return of Henry
Yep,
Cejudo, Charles Oliveira, Benil Dariush, Aljamain, all that on there. That's a good card as well. And then you have UFC 290, International Fight
huge.
Week.
Yeah,
And I feel like this card is essentially like they're phoning it in. I
yeah,
think this is very comparable to when they had Nunes, that second COVID pay per view, when Nunes headlined against Felicia Spencer. I mean,
yeah,
the
yeah.
the co-main on that was wasn't that Cody and a Sunsao?
I think
And then
so.
you had
Yeah.
like Sean O'Malley on there against Eddie Wineland, which was fine and whatnot. So, um, I think you need to go pretty big though for a co-main here. Like I
Hmm.
mentioned Poirier Gaethje too as a 5-round
Yeah.
co-main.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you need to do if you're going to make this the main event. I love Amanda Nunes. I like Juliana Pena. I'm not, like you said, I feel weird about saying like, well, they shouldn't be a main event. But let's just be honest with ourselves, Dom. It's not of the same caliber of fight as every other main event we've gotten this year, and probably every other main event we'll get the rest of the year.
And if you want to even take it a step further, it's not the same quality as other women's title fights would be as a main
Well,
event
and
either.
this is the thing. It's not nothing against either one of them. It's not against Nunes. It's not against Pena. But it's the fact that there is essentially no interest in that fight.
Yeah.
And when I say no interest, I stand by. I think Pena is probably the best choice for this
Yeah.
next title fight. If
Yeah.
the only other one that would have made any sense to me is Irene Aldana because you have that Mexican
Yeah.
champion storyline. But outside of that, like you said, they're 1-1. But everybody knows deep down that this is probably going to be Amanda domination again. I think that's what the perceived. They don't look at it like, oh, it's 1-1. It could go either way.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
everybody's sort of at this point viewing that first fight as a fluke.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's fair. But because of that, this fight does not have that kind of sellability of being a main event. That's just that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. And I just want to say something real quick too. You said interest, right? In terms of
Yeah.
nobody really having interest in to see that. But it goes just a step further because that's the whole problem with this division right now. No one
Yeah.
has interest in the women's bantamweight division. It's so just stale, and I don't know what even really can be done to make it better. But that's the problem with all of the 135 pounds right now. You look at strawweight on fire, flyweight absolutely on fire, crushing it right now with all these new names. And then there's bantamweight, right there at the end, 135 pounds. And again, I'm just kind of rambling and adding on to your point of like the interest in the fight. The interest in the whole division is just not there, Noah. And
Yeah.
I don't know when it will come back. I don't know what can be done to bring it back, but it seems like a big problem, honestly.
Well, it is, but I'm sure in a couple years we have the sport moves so fast,
Yeah.
and that's why I think it's more noticeable
Yeah.
because this division has remained stagnant
Right.
really
And all the
since
others have changed. And
it
then there's
seems
just,
like after Nunes beat Shevchenko at bantamweight that way back when, it feels like that was like the night that just stagnated this division
yep.
forever.
Yep.
And that's a long time. That was 2017. And typically when you have so much movement in and around these divisions, you don't expect that, but that's why it's been more noticeable with this one. But I have a feeling that eventually it's going to change. In a couple of years, all of
Yeah.
a sudden, bantamweight will be the best division in all of women's MMA. It's just, I don't think there's anything that really needs to be done per se. Just finding the right talent, finding the
Just have
right
to wait it
prospects to
out.
invest in. It is
Yeah.
interesting. Like 125 is getting a lot of prospects. 115 always getting prospects. Why it seems weird. 135 just
Yeah.
not. I don't
And
know.
that's like the
It's
OG women's class too,
yeah.
so
Well,
it's
a
weird.
lot of it might have been because that was the only weight class there before. Now
Yeah.
that you have these lighter weight classes, maybe these women typically like to fight at these low. The best women's fighters in the world are typically at that weight. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Very good.
Um, but yeah, just to kind of finish it off, Nunes Pena should not be a main event. Just shouldn't. If this was the second fight, I wouldn't be as against it.
Way big. Yeah. Yeah.
Which the second fight was it the main event? Yeah, it was the main event when they fought.
I think so. Yeah.
So like I thought the second fight had enough interest to be a main event.
Yeah.
This one just doesn't. It's not a knock on either one of them, but that's exactly why this should be a co-main. And I know I get what you're saying though. Like, well, you don't know what's available or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're the UFC, you know,
Especially going back to Canada for the first time in a while,
yeah, I mean, sure. It to me though, it's like okay, you're gonna go. They go so big on certain cards, and International Fight Week deserves to have that kind of propping up. But I don't like them to go so big on certain cards to just leave other cards barren.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what's the real intrigue of getting this card right now? Now we'll find out as more fights are
Of
announced, but
course.
I did see some people saying maybe they might do the fight that you were talking about a while back, Mandalay Mosh fighting for Zhang Wei Li's title.
Oh, they might do both on the same card.
I've heard that was, or I've just heard that was what some people were speculating, but
Okay.
that's not rumored or
Yeah.
anything really. But and if so, it's just the UFC really need to get past this whole idea of like if you have multiple title fights on a card, you put the higher weight class at
Yeah.
the top.
Yeah. Put the
Just
bigger fight at the top.
like it doesn't matter to us. At the end of the day, you get both fights, but like just come on.
Yeah.
I mean, Lemos Zhang just would be the more interesting
Oh
fight, I
yeah.
think.
1000%.
Even
Yeah.
though I still have that take out there about Lemos has a less than 0% chance of
Yeah.
getting a title fight. Not looking great by today, but let's move on to the PFL 2, Dominic. The
Mm,
recap for PFL 2, women's featherweights and heavyweights. Kind of a card that was, especially with UFC 287 being so big.
yeah.
PFL definitely going under the radar. Just going in, these are two of the weaker weight classes, I would say,
Mhm.
of their divisions overall. And then you have like Ante D'Elia out, who was last season's heavyweight champion. Kayla Harrison's not a part of this season. It was definitely like a card on paper that was like, all right, we're going to need some people to really stand out here and show us, that they're someone to be reckoned with for this season.
Yeah.
Main event, Larissa Pacheco gets a unanimous decision win over Julia Budd. And then the co-main at your heavyweight main event, if you want to call it that, Bruno Capoloza
Whew.
avenges his loss from June against Matthias Scheffel with a first-round TKO. So, I guess, Dominic, I'll just kind of open it to you, for the whole card, your standouts, your takeaways. Obviously, Pacheco and Capoloza are going to command some headlines, but was there anybody who surprised you lower on this card? Anybody who disappointed you, perhaps?
Oh man. You're so good at wording your questions sometimes and making me think. And I
Mm.
appreciate that. I need to think more. You know, better card than what we got last week, right? In terms of
Yeah,
the outcomes anyway.
completely.
So that's
Yeah,
good. Name value was way less, but
that,
the
that's a
fights were
that's
better.
a low bar to set, but it did
Yeah.
achieve that. No, it was a solid card actually by
Yeah.
what we got. I thought.
Yeah, I enjoyed the card. Decent takeaways. Rizvan Kunayev, the Eagle FC champion, former Contender Series
Mhm.
alum, came in, beat Henan Fajera. He dominated. It's unfair of me to say I wanted him to come in and starch Henan Fajera. People don't really necessarily do that to him. But it was a pretty good fight. I mean, nothing too crazy in that one. Maurice Green had a really big bounce back win, got a TKO in the second round. He had been stumbling. I think he even had like a 10-7 record. He's the second biggest guy in this division at 6'7". It was kind of just like a feel good moment to see Maurice Green win. The biggest like moment single moment of the card was way down on the prelims. Amber Leibrock
Ooh,
absolutely fucking
yeah,
knocked Martina Jindrova's head into the 15th
yeah.
row of the arena,
He
man.
was a
That
2
head
to 1
kick
draw.
was, oh, it was just beautiful. It's one of the best knockouts that we've been able to see and cover so far this year. So you know what? I mean, that was her PFL debut. You come in and you starch someone that's been in the season last year. Obviously, this is at featherweight now, but still a veteran of the PFL. All of a sudden, your name's kind of up there, and not only is your name up there, you're first on the leaderboard with that quick six. So that was kind of the three things for me. Obviously, Bruno bouncing back was massive. I feel like he needed that to kind of
Mhm.
get his name back to where he was, a 2021 champion. And Julia Budd, way more competitive than I expected. Actually, it was a pretty decent fight on all that main event. So I know I kind of rambled, hit a little bit of everything, but in my head, those are like the five main things to me.
Yeah, Dominic hitting every fighter on the card, not really leaving me with many options here. No, I'm just kidding. But Biagio Ali Wall, shout out to him.
Mm-hmm.
I liked our tweet actually talking about his fight on Twitter. But that was the amateur bout, of course. That's the grandson of Muhammad Ali. He got the first round TKO over Isaiah Figueroa. And I will just say for that kid, man, I know it's an amateur bout, so like, take your time on in terms of going pro, but you can't teach that speed in those hands like that.
Runs in them jeans, I
Was
guess.
impressive, man. The speed that was like wild for
Yeah.
light. I mean, he looked like a damn flyweight throwing those hands. Like,
Yeah.
so shout out to him. A lot of what you said, I really agree with. Larissa Pacheco, Julia Budd was a very not very close. It was a very competitive fight.
Yeah.
And considering Julia Budd's struggles early on in the PFL, and I know it kind of continues here. She's now 1-3, but I thought she made a very good account of herself. It
Mm-hmm.
was an exciting fight, more than I thought it would be going in. Bruno bouncing back. Can he replicate what he did in 2021? I kind of hope so. I did bet on Matthias Scheffel, which I know we'll talk about, but I'm glad he was able to prove me wrong because I like that Bruno's run in 2021 a lot. And if he's really for real back, then that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Dom, I'm going to have to go with a couple disappointments here. Jorgen De Castro, just a guy you think when he goes outside the UFC, he may learn to let loose and throw them hands, but he did not. I don't know how many strikes he threw in this fight, but it wasn't a lot. You could probably count it on your hands, and that would. But he loses a unanimous decision to Danilo Marquez. And also Dominic, I had to bring her up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Dominic's fault that I put her on a parlay because Dominic had infected me. Dominic had been the biggest super fan of Aspen Ladd for years. He had been shouting from the rooftops that she was a future UFC champion. She was going to be the best women's fighter of all time. All this. And then she washes out the UFC, and then he says he's going to be the face of PFL. He's going to bring the PFL to the UFC's level, all this stuff. She did get a win over Julia Budd at the last season's championship. So I'm like, you know what? Because Dom's my good friend and I trust him very much, I'm going to put Aspen Ladd in this parlay. And she lost a majority decision to Elena Kolesnik. And truthfully, Dom, I just don't think Aspen Ladd looked very good here. All jokes aside about your role, no, I really thought that she should dominate this fight. I get it. Aspen Ladd has struggled with, she was a 135 pounder for most of her UFC career, but she really struggled to make weight. Moving to 145, I thought she looked pretty good against Julia Budd, and the way she won that fight didn't really give Budd an inch in there. I thought that was impressive despite Julia's maybe on the downturn now, but Olena Kolesnik definitely had a big size advantage here. And I think that was ultimately her problem, Dom. I just think Aspen Ladd isn't fit for either division. She can't make weight for 135. She's killing herself to do that. And I think she's too undersized for her type of game at 145. A game that depends on clinch, that depends on takedowns, that depends on using a lot of strength in these exchanges. And she is being outmuscled by someone like Olena Kolesnik. I think that I don't think we're going to see Aspen Ladd be competing at the top of this division.
Nope, I definitely agree with you.
Wow.
That hurts, right, for me to say that.
Swallow?
But yeah, I mean, after this one, there's really not much left I can say for Aspen. It's a shame, truthfully.
Yeah,
but
no, it is. It's. I mean, it's not that much different than some of the other fighters who we've talked about, like Kelvin Gastelum. We've talked about where they're like these tweeners.
Yeah,
like if there was a 140-pound weight class, maybe she'd be really good. I don't know. It's a little, the 10-pound thing,
right?
A little different, but she does feel like someone who is just, if she could make 135, it would be so much better for her, but she just can't. I don't know why. She feels like she has the frame where she should be able to make it. But again, obviously, I'm a fat guy who's talking about this. Like, what do I know about weight cutting? But it's, we'll move on to the below average bet slip. We're already kind of talking about betting a little bit. And Dominic, I'm going to let you go first. I want to know what your kind of takeaways are. You don't have to go like bet by bet necessarily, but just was there any surprises, anything you regretted that you placed, or anything that you wish you would have done that you didn't?
For me, I went 1-4 minus 2.93 for me. You guys will see obviously the combined stats and whatnot. But I felt good about all these bets. If I had to say I have a regret, maybe it's Amorim by finish. But holy shit, I mean, in the first round, she had a rear naked choke in 3 different times, tight. And Sam Hughes was just able to fight it off. And as soon as that first round ended, I knew my bet was done. I knew immediately Sam Hughes was going to win that fight. I should have live bet while I still had the chance to profit with Sam Hughes. But other than that, man, Michelle Watterson lost a really, really close split decision. Chris Curtis lost a really, really close unanimous decision, but just a great fight that was really close. My parlay, Holland gets a big knockout in the third. Earl Rush's Jr. falters because he can't do it in rounds 2 and 3. It is what it is. Those are the ones I lost. Loved Loopy and Joe Pyfer together. Love to even pair them together again on a future card, but just one of those nights. The ball didn't kind of roll our way, Noah. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I really started out tough here. I mean, I went 0-2 in the PFL. So that was already bad vibes. When you start
Yeah.
out bad, it's just and
Oh,
thankfully I'm moving to Ohio in a week, so then I'll never be able to bet on PFL again.
yeah.
But we'll start out 0-2. So then we go into today. Amorim loses the first fight. That's a parlay down. And that was a
Yeah.
parlay that was already butchered by Carl Williams and Chase Sherman being taken off. I think
Yeah.
we all can agree Carl Williams was probably going to win that fight, right?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, Dom. But that parlay was just fucked anyways because I have Raul Rosas Jr. on there
Yeah.
too, and then Gilbert Burns. But yeah, like that was just bad vibes already, and we just started out super bad. So at the end of the night, when I looked and I went minus 3.69, I somehow was like, wow, that's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
Like I really did not calculate till the end, and I thought I was like minus 10 units. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I really thought because last week I went like -6 or something, and I felt like this week was worse than
Yeah.
last week. But evidently, it's just because I think I got a little bit better as the night went on.
Yeah. Had a good main
Um,
card.
Big regret here, Dom.
Mm.
I don't know if do you want to guess what my big regret is? I'm curious what you would guess.
I'm going to assume it's the live ad.
So no, I mean I wish I kind of just wouldn't have because if I had done the math properly, I probably would have realized, okay, I can still save this and I don't have to start live adding. But man, I
Mhm.
thought that parlay was going to be great. And then the over 1.5 didn't even hit either
Yeah.
for Yanez. So that was fucked. But no, actually, the one that I would say is my big regret is taking that Watterson Pinero to be won by unanimous or majority decision.
Yeah.
Dominic, when I went to those props, what caught my eye was the split decision one, which
Yeah.
was plus 350.
Yeah.
And I said,
Yeah.
"Oh man, that's looking nice." I'm
Mm.
looking at their resumes. I'm like, that feels like a fight that could,
Yep.
be really close. And then I started thinking about it more, and I went, you know what though? I'm like, I could totally see Watterson just like coming out and just showing like, yeah, I'm taking a step back, but I'm still much better than Pinero,
Yeah.
or vice versa.
Yep. Yeah.
Pinero come out and be like, no, I'm ready for this next step, and Watterson just doesn't have much left. So then I somehow did what I had been telling myself not to do all year, where I overthought it. I went
Yeah.
against what my initial thought was, and I bet at a minus 175.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unanimous or majority decision. It was my weakest play of the
Laid
day.
the chalk.
And I knew when that fight was over, I was even texting in our
Yep.
group, Dom, and I said, this is going to be a split decision, ain't it? And it was. And I was like, oh my God. Why? Why didn't I go for the plus 350?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a ton of, that's what really saved me. Rob Font money line was a big one for me. That made me feel pretty good. Couple parlays hit. I mean, that's really it. Like the Masvidal by KOTK was essentially a flyer, anyways.
Right.
I knew that one was not very likely, but at plus 700 for a guy who had
Yep.
only won his fights by KO since 2016, I mean, got to at least take a stab on it.
Right.
Pereira, I said I'm not going to overthink it. He's 3-0 against Izzy. What happened was fully a possibility
Yeah.
in my
You
mind.
said it. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the haters and losers want to come after me on our TikTok now, but no, I'm just kidding. But, yeah, I Pereira losing like doesn't. If they fought again, I'm sure Izzy would be closer to like a minus 200, and I probably would not bet on Pereira that time, but for this one, had to do it. Had to have Izzy prove me wrong, and he did.
Yeah. It is what it is. On to
Um,
Kansas City.
Yep, on to Kansas City, exactly. We will end the show with the only segment we know how, Dom. It is time for a little closing statements. The point of the show where me and Dominic can talk about anything and everything, MMA related or not. So, Dominic, do you have any closing statements for this holiday edition of the show?
I'll hit you with a quick question real fast. NBA playoffs start on Tuesday, the play-in tournament. I know it's not officially kind of in set in stone who's all going to be in. But any leans, Noah? Any leans for you? Who's potentially taking home that NBA title this year?
Can I use? You asked me a question. Can I do what a lot of times you do and not answer the question, and then I don't know why I felt the need to throw some shade on you there for no reason. No, I have a confession to make about NBA, and
Oh,
this is,
okay.
I'm actually going to group in MLB baseball as well.
Well, this is even better then. This is even
Yeah.
better.
So ever since I became a fan of combat sports, specifically MMA, back on that nice summer day in Dom's basement in 2016, I find it very hard to remain engaged with NBA and MLB regular season. They're too long. There's
You know
no
what? I agree.
stakes.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like there's any stakes if you watch daily.
Yeah.
Now, playoffs, on the other hand, I can get behind.
Mm.
And Dom, I've never like NBA. I've always liked, but I've never really had my team. Like at times, I kind of really liked the Big Three Celtics back in the day, but then I liked LeBron with the Cavs. All that. So I never really had my team. I guess I'm technically a Cavs fan, but in every other sport, I'm a Cincinnati guy.
Yeah.
Which, to my point, what I'm about to say, I'm a huge Reds fan. That was my first love of sports, was back being like 4 years old, collecting Reds baseball cards and bobbleheads and all this stuff. It's hard to watch 162 games.
It's way too long. Yeah.
Especially when each week, Dom, we get fights that truly impact each person in the cage's career. I mean, there is so much at stake for every fight. Even if a casual fan watches and doesn't see it, we do. We know, based off of how long we've done this, what these people are really putting on the line here and what it means for them. A lot of these people don't come from much. They have a full family to support. And, in MLB and NBA, you just don't get those kind of stakes on a night-to-night basis. So it's or even a week-to-week basis. It just doesn't happen.
And when your favorite team loses 100 games a year, it makes it even more hard to watch.
Yeah, like the Reds. If I had to give a prediction, though, based off of what I've seen this season from the NBA, that's a great question because it kind of feels like it's up in the air, in my
It
opinion.
does. I agree. Yeah.
You know what, Dominic? I'm gonna say it. I think this is the year the Los Angeles Clippers get it done.
Man, that'd be a long time coming. You're fucking with me. You're just yanking my chain. Yeah, you little turd.
Well, Dominic, no, that's my pick. I'm gonna bet it. I'm gonna bet the Clippers.
If you send me the slip, I'll bet it with you. If you bet it.
Wait, why do I have to send you the slip? You don't trust me?
I know how you are making fun of me and my Clippers. No, man. Listen, if they ever one day can put it all together, Paul George needs to be healthy. Maybe they do make a run.
No, they got rid of Luke Kennard. They're a better team now. No, I'm just
Ray,
kidding.
man, Russell Westbrook's coming to play since he's been there.
Russell Westbrook's on the team?
Yeah, he's been killing it since he joined.
That tells you anything. I haven't been paying attention much lately.
So selfishly, I'll go Clips, but another team I'd like to see actually try and put it all together and finally get over the hurdle would be the Nuggets. Jokic and Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, all those fellas. They could
would be
potentially
a great finals matchup for everything you said, like just two teams that I want to see kind of get over that hump. The Nuggets and the 76ers would be a good
that'd be a
series.
Dude, and that's the two guys for MVP.
And
Jokic
and everybody's
Embiid.
been fucking. That's what.
Yeah,
truthfully, that's the matchup I'm rooting for.
That'd be huge.
Do I think that's gonna happen? Probably not.
Yeah,
I think the East Celtics and Bucks feel like the real safe picks there, but Giannis is my dude. That's been my guy for a long time. But my official pick on the Below Average Joe's MMA show, affecting the bet slip, is the Los Angeles Clippers to win it all.
Fuck it. Me too, then, baby. Let's go.
All right. Well, my name's Noah Baker. That's Dominic Slee. We are but just two of the Below Average Joes, and we'll see you guys on Friday.